pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to films I should have talked about years ago. And so, for this one, if you're very familiar with Bruce Lee, the almighty legend when it comes to Japanese-based sort of fighting films out there, then well, get ready. Because the offspring of Bruce Lee, Brandon Lee, managed to hit it big with a film known as The Crow in '94. But now is the time where I go ahead to talk a bit about the sequel called Angels, pretty much, but it's just simply more known as The Crow City of Angels. Yeah, that was a bit hard for me to put together because let's just say that a lot of people call it a horrible sequel in comparison to the first. The way I see it though, again, this is another one of those cases where people would potentially lie about these kind of films just to get clout and try to get popularity. Man. To know that I actually had the patience, the virtue, and the subjection to watch The Crow 2 throughout the whole entire thing, start to finish. The Crow City of Angels was released in 1996, quite some time after Brandon Lee's death took place. An accidental gunshot wound that happened on set ended up doing Brandon in. But that didn't really stop the producers and directors from making sequels to it, because as a matter of fact, other than City of Angels, they were actually able to make 2 more sequels. They were able to make a Crow 3 and The Crow 4. Yeah, another 9 years passed before they decided to end it completely. Yeah, so in total, that's 4 The Crow films. Between 1994 and 2005, there were 4 films in there. One of them had Brandon Lee in it, and the other 3, well, not so much. But let me just say that City of Angels does a whole lot more in comparison to the first one. It does not star the famous Eric Draven like in the first one, but it in fact stars a new character known as Ash, whose child ends up getting abducted, and they both end up getting killed and then tossed into the river, left for dead. But eventually what happens is that in the same way as the first movie pretty much happened with The Crow, basically leading Ash's soul to the world of the living, just like what happened with Eric Draven in the first film, Ash goes on for an entire ruthless, vengeful revenge slaughterhouse. And what happens here is that throughout the rest of the film, it's as crazy as you can possibly think. There are so many amazing instances where Ash pretty much goes around town looking for every possible suspect that was responsible for both of their deaths. And as we see that Ash actually does eventually stumble onto the mastermind behind this entire plotted event that had taken place, well, it's as simple as you think. Ash basically stumbles upon an entire gala full of people out there wearing masks and putting on some strange old grunge music from the 90s. And the thing is that this entire film is a bit more than just taking the simple revenge cliche, resurrection, and a lot of action and some horror and comedy put into place. The kind of dark graphical details that are implied within this film are not necessarily met with as much glamour or as much style as the first one. It did have a bit more color in the first one, but here you can't really see a whole lot. Mostly because of the fact that, well, it has a bit of a darker tone and a somewhat more grim and even pale lifestyle going into it. It does essentially, though, give us a bit of a satirical feel on how exactly crime had gone throughout most of these ginormous urban sprawls in their own rights. But the way that we see this film in comparison to the first one, lots of people call it crap because it doesn't really bear anything to do with the old Eric Draven from the first film, and that's simply because Brandon Lee had died before a sequel could ever be made. Also, I pretty much gotta mention the fact that there were no video games or other media that took place other than the movies themselves when the first Crow came out. But by the time the sequel came around, there actually were video games. The Crow City of Angels on Sega Saturn, PlayStation 1, and PC, pretty much. An Angry Video Game Nerd episode pretty much talks exactly about that. Where the sequel is called, well, you know what. But if I really want to justify this film any better, I have to mention the ending. It pretty much goes along with something that should have definitely become meme material. Ash basically becomes weak enough to the point while trying to rescue a few innocents from this same exact sort of cliche boss that takes place. The same kind of boss that commanded those criminals to murder Ash along with Ash's child and dump them into the river, pretty much. But by the time they both cross paths again, well, guess what happens? The crow itself ends up getting captured and put into a cage. And Ash almost becomes weak trying to climb up the building to try and confront that guy. Man, I tell you, as gruesome as that whole entire thing can be, let me go ahead and say, take me! And there you go. That's apparently how the boss gets defeated. Ash shouts into the air to summon an entire flock of crows to shred that guy to pieces. Wow. Like, that is an amazing ending right there. I will kind of admit that the sequel itself is a bit bland, not quite as colorful, and doesn't really seem to hold up in the same way as the first one. But you know what? Take me! More than makes up for that. Ash knew how to properly close off a battle against a very tough boss. So you know what? That's definitely meme material right there. Someone really ought to make something like that up as a GIF or something like that. But let me just tell you, I even went as far as to give this a review on IMDb, but the way I see it, I feel like my score should probably be a bit different because I was able to watch it again and, well, I don't really see a whole lot of potential within it. So again, the film itself is not necessarily well made, nor does it seem to hold up to the highest standards that it could have possibly been. So in a way, let's just say that the score for this one's a bit lower than you might expect from someone like me, a big seeker who looks out for these films and tries to give them the best possibility with my own knowledge and my own mindset. So for The Crow, City of Angels, the sequel to the first Crow and the first sequel in the Crow series to not do so well, let's just say a 6.1 out of 10. So, you know what? It certainly is not as good of a film out there as many others throughout the mid to late 90s, but The Crow, City of Angels does, once again, it holds up in its own right and does, in fact, try to continue on with another story inside of the main canon itself. So, otherwise, I don't necessarily see a whole lot of things wrong with it. Mostly because of the fact that Brandon Lee had died and there was not necessarily as much of a budget put into place. They couldn't really have created a better masterpiece in comparison to their first entry into The Crow itself. So anyways, that will be pretty much it for today. But check in tomorrow because let me tell you, who are you going to call? Hopefully not anything bad. But you'll have to find out what happens tomorrow morning. If you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.